On India tonight, we're turning our attention to the SCO Summit, the Shanghai Cooperation Organisation Summit taking place in Pakistan. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has arrived in Islamabad yesterday, and he's the one participating in the 23rd Shanghai Cooperation Organisation Summit. And in his address over there, he's reiterated the group's commitment to the Charter and its core objectives. But he's taken a jibe at Pakistan without naming Pakistan, stating how terror activities across borders would unlikely encourage bilateral trade. He has highlighted how there is a need to counter the quote-unquote three evils: terrorism, extremism and separatism. What's the significance of what the External Affairs Minister has said over there? Let's discuss all of this. Michael Kugelman, Senior Associate for South Asia at the Woodrow Wilson Center in DC, joining us on the show. Great to have you with us, Michael. You know, it is the first senior Indian official going to Pakistan after like a decade. And yes, of course, he's attending an SCO summit. But so far, the Indian Foreign Minister is saying that terrorism, extremism and separatism are hindering trade and connectivity between India and Pakistan, what he calls the three evils. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think that it's actually a very prudent way of conveying concerns about Pakistan. Dr. Jaishankar essentially drew on what he views to be the core goals of SCO at this moment of time, which include strengthening trade and connectivity between South and Central Asia. But he made the point that it's going to be difficult to achieve those goals so long as you continue to have these challenges, including terrorism, which was clearly directed at Pakistan. And the Pakistani Prime Minister in his own speech had essentially said that that's what we want to do with SCO. We want to bring more integration, more prosperity, more connectivity within our regions. And for Dr. Jaishankar to essentially say, well, that sounds like a great idea, but we have to deal with this terrorism problem. I think it's a perfectly diplomatic, but also a very wise and clever way to indirectly direct some criticism at Pakistan.
India's consistent stand against state-sponsored terrorism, how much support has it been able to get in the international community, and how relevant is it to the SCO, which was created by China and Russia? It was back in 2001 as a successor to the Shanghai Five, and which, outside of economic and political cooperation, has this built-in regional anti-terrorist structure as well. But how much of a difference has India made with its consistent stand on state-sponsored terrorism?
Well, yeah, counterterrorism has always been one of the core objectives and focus areas of SCO. And if you go back to SCO's early days, a lot of it was related to Afghanistan. One reason SCO was formed was because of concerns about militancy and terrorism in Afghanistan. Ironically, Afghanistan did not participate in this summit. It hasn't participated in any of the summits that have happened since the Taliban came back to power, because none of the SCO member states recognize the Taliban government. But yeah, counterterrorism is a big part of what SCO does. But this is one reason why SCO struggles to be effective. You don't have agreement on the key issues, including the issue of terrorism. As we just discussed, India has concerns about terrorism in Pakistan. Pakistan, of course, would feel very differently about what India has to say about terrorism concerns inside Pakistan. But I think that more globally, to your question, I do think that India has been very effective in conveying its concerns about terrorism in the region to the broader international community. And I would argue that even the likes of Russia and China see eye to eye with India on concerns, particularly about Islamist terrorism and terrorist organizations that are based in Pakistan and in Afghanistan, because these groups all threaten all these countries, and particularly China, as it hopes to build up more of a presence in Afghanistan. It has to worry about the Islamic State Khorasan threat. So counterterrorism is a big part of SCO, but I would argue that India has been more effective at building coalitions of support, so to speak, outside of SCO than inside it.
I think Pakistan was being provocative when Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has suggested the expansion of the China-Pakistan economic corridor to make this huge SCO connectivity framework, like he was saying. But this is the corridor that India has opposed since it passes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir.
Right. Again, another reason why we shouldn't overstate the impact that SCO could have. I mean, you have countries that are members that don't agree with each other and take positions that other countries within the group reject, including CPEC, indeed. And not surprisingly, the Pakistani Prime Minister also brought attention to the Kashmir issue. So, I think that we have to sort of look at things in a broad perspective here and acknowledge that a lot of nice sounding statements, a lot of nice sounding speeches coming out of the leaders that were a part of this summit. But given the members, India, Pakistan, India, China, they're countries that don't agree on fundamental issues, and that I think is going to make it very difficult to move forward and to be impactful in a big way.
The Chinese dragon now fit into the India-Pakistan relationship. Already Indian and Chinese troops have had the standoff. It happened in eastern Ladakh. There are concerns over China's increasing military might in the Indian Ocean. So how are the three countries placed against each other as members of the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Can there be much cooperation here if there isn't enough mutual trust between them?
Yeah, I mean, India and China, as you would know, do work together in a number of multilateral and minilateral groups, whether you're talking about SCO or BRICS or the AIIB. But it's relatively unusual to have China, India, and Pakistan working together in a relatively small multilateral organization, and that certainly makes things difficult, quite frankly. And I would argue that we've seen some indications of a modest détente in India-China competition, particularly as the two sides, including the two militaries, have continued to talk on high levels about the border issue, even though they're nowhere near reaching any type of resolution. But that still remains a fraught relationship, and of course the India-Pakistan relationship, which I would argue has stabilized a bit over the last 2 years since the LOC truce was concluded 3 years ago. But India-Pakistan ties are still quite fraught as well. So you look at this India-Pakistan-China triangle. There's really not much that they agree on and that they could work together on, particularly when you're talking about a relatively small multilateral grouping like SCO, where it's difficult to overlook the fact that they're there and don't agree. It can't be hidden, within a broader group of 15 or 20 or 50 other countries. You're dealing with a relatively small membership, even with some new members coming in over the last year or so.
It's interesting that you say that there is some sense of stability in India-Pakistan relationship. This is pertinent. In today's context, we're talking about Canada in much the same way as we do Pakistan in the past. India says that Canada is sheltering and sponsoring anti-India elements. Now, senior diplomats are getting expelled on both sides. The language in government statements, both Indian and Canadian, is getting more and more combative. Why do you reckon Canada is sounding like another Pakistan from the Indian side, Michael?
Yeah, well, I mean, the context is very similar. I mean, as you say, I mean, India's strong view appears to be that China is sponsoring anti-India extremists and terrorists, and yeah, that's the same criticism and allegations at the level that at Pakistan for so many years. And I think that the India-Canada relationship has really deteriorated to the point that there's just so much anger on both sides, and specifically the Indian side, a view that Canada has refused to deal for such a long time with these individuals that really worry India a lot. And it sounds a lot like Pakistan, quite frankly. How long has India been expressing its frustration about Pakistan not willing to crack down on anti-India extremists and terrorists on its soil? This is the same position that India has been taking vis-a-vis Canada. I don't want to overstate the comparison. A lot of people, including myself, have indeed likened India's relations with Canada to India and Pakistan. But let's be clear. Despite all the problems in the India-Canada relationship, there are a number of strategic convergences, particularly when it comes to views of the Indo-Pacific. Very robust trade ties, though those could be impacted. And you've got very strong people-to-people ties between Canada and India, especially because of the large Indian diaspora in Canada. So I wouldn't overstate the comparison, but still, it's true. I mean, it's the same story, it's the same themes, and for India, the same concern that Canada is sheltering individuals that India finds to be very threatening and very dangerous. It's the same thing that we've heard in the Pakistan context.
Well, Michael, as much as India is pushing its diplomatic agenda on several fronts, we are seeing all these developments in the 23rd SCO Summit. And SCO, as much as it may not have achieved in the past, it's also the summit which has been responsible for an Indian foreign minister crossing from the Wagah border. It has that to its credit. We'll see what they're able to achieve in this particular summit. Michael, it's always a pleasure getting your perspective. Thanks very much for joining us on India Tonight here on ET Now.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.